This is Ray Mooney's Wild World of Wet Shaving. Let's begin. Hey, this is Ray Mooney. Welcome back. Today I'd like to welcome Master Soaper, Handle Turner, a man who likely already knows what I'm thinking, cherished submember and artisan Kyle from Summer Break Soaps. He's also known as Rocket455 on Reddit. Welcome to the podcast, my good sir.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I have a question right off the bat. Any significance to your username, Rocket455?
Yeah, actually, and I do have to make a correction that almost nobody notices. There's a K in the middle. Rocket K455.
Ah, I did not
I can't
notice.
imagine the number of, yeah, I bet whoever, if there's a Rocket 455, I'm sure they've gotten some strange DMs on Reddit
Right.
from people who have missed that.
Sure.
I know I've been guilty of Steven sending it
Right.
without the underscore J. Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm sure that person's also gotten some odd ones. Um, but anyway, a long time ago back in high school, um, my dad had a car, an Oldsmobile Cutlass S, which was
Sure.
related to the 442 for anybody
Okay.
who's muscle car people.
Yeah.
So I inherited his car, and kind of historically, Oldsmobile engines were referred to as rockets. So
Yeah.
that's the rocket and the 455. The K is just my initial. Why I stuck it in there, I don't know, but
That
just
makes
confuse
sense.
people, I guess.
Sure, but that's a great explanation of the name. And I remember that car. A friend of mine had an Oldsmobile Delta 98. And
Oh,
I
nice.
believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a Rocket 454 engine.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
boy did that thing drink gas, but it was fun to
Yeah,
get around in as a teenager.
yeah.
So I've read, I've done a little bit of research on you, as best I could, and I've read that wet shaving seems so appealing to you, as a first hobby that you just dove right in when you discovered it. Is that
hmm
is that true? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think like most of us, it started off as a money saving thing.
Right.
And I've got a whole story of how I ended up there. But I think the main reason I stuck around though was the community. So it went really quick, really from, well, I could save some money to this is actually kind of fun to talk about this stuff.
Sure. I feel the exact same way. That's hence this podcast.
Yeah.
Did you discover the subreddit r wet shaving first? Is that what led you to start all of this, or did you get into shaving and then sort of find the subreddit?
Yeah, that's a good place for my whole story, which
Ah,
again
perfect.
probably exists somewhere on Reddit, but I know a lot of your listeners are probably newer.
Yes.
I've been around for quite some time now, not as long as some of your other guests, but um, yeah, really it started originally trying to save money, and I stumbled. I have a guilty, I don't know what I'd say, guilty pleasure addiction to Kickstarter. I don't know
Okay.
if you're aware of Kickstarter and the
Sure.
website where people can launch projects, you back them, and then if they succeed, you get a reward.
Right.
Well, back in the day, Rockwell, the company Rockwell used Kickstarter, and it was their second campaign for the Model T, their adjustable razor. And
Okay.
so I kind of decided I'll back this razor when it comes out, I'll start wet shaving. That project was rather plagued with delays.
Yeah.
Um, so that didn't come true. But around that time, I asked my grandma if she just happened to have any of my grandpa's old shaving stuff,
Okay.
and she did.
Wow.
And she had a lot of stuff. I
Yeah.
think there's a picture somewhere back in the old days of Wicked Edge, of all the stuff that I got from my grandma that was my grandpa's. That was pretty darn cool. And so I
That's
cleaned up some
fantastic.
of that stuff,
Yeah.
bought a new brush, and that started my wet shaving journey. So I'd say I found Wicked Edge. Wicked Edge led me to our wet shaving, and then
Yes.
continued from there.
The rest is history. That's often the case. People often find Wicked Edge first and then go from there.
Yeah,
And our wet shaving seems to be a bit more, curated, refined, maybe. I'm not sure.
yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. That's really neat, though, getting all that stuff from your grandfather. That's a great way into the world of wet shaving.
Yeah,
Fantastic. And do you
yeah,
still
it's
use?
super cool. I still regularly use. Yeah, several of them.
Really? That's great.
I used his Slim Adjustable was the first razor I ever used, and it's still a regular part of my rotation as
It's
our
wonderful.
flare tip of his and a couple other older super speeds.
Really neat. I like that a lot. What did the community look like back then as compared to now? You said you're an old timer, so actually, let me backtrack a bit. When did you get involved? What year?
I was trying to figure that out. This will be so we're recording this on the eve of the Lather Games here, starting
That's
in a
right,
couple days.
indeed.
The Shaving Lather Games, and this will be my ninth year
Oh
participating.
wow. Okay,
So yeah, which is crazy.
that's
So
great
probably
though.
roughly 11 years ago would be my guess when I first started wet shaving, 10 to
Okay,
11.
yeah. So definitely an old timer
Um,
compared to most here.
yeah,
I
yeah,
only
for sure, which makes me feel really old.
well,
Um,
I'm.
but the
You're
community was different, especially our wet shaving. I think I've heard a few of your other guests allude to it was kind of a rough, scary place a little bit. Wicked Edge was far more and still is very approachable. I really appreciate how easy it is to slide into Wicked Edge and ask a question.
Sure. I mean, anything goes on that sub.
Yeah,
More than wet shaving, which, we said before is a bit more curated, but also stricter, if you will.
yeah, yeah. And back then, I mean, if you posted a question without being in the right thread, not only were you going to get downvoted, you were going to get probably insulted. It
Wow.
was really kind of a rougher place where now I don't think that exists anymore. I feel like our wet shaving is far more approachable, far kinder, far more helpful than it
Yes.
used to be.
That's a good
I think
thing, I guess. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, most of those grumpy old people moved on.
right. Well, are they still, do you still, I've heard you refer to IRC, and I know that that was a big facet of it at the very beginning. Certainly when I joined, I tried to check it out and I was overwhelmed, uh,
Yeah,
by the IRC channel.
yeah. I was a regular member of IRC, but I have not been on there for quite some time.
Right. And what,
Which again, I felt like the IRC really switched as as the subreddit evolved. So who did the IRC? It wasn't quite as grumpy and
okay.
exclusive as it was when I first started.
Right. Nonetheless, I mean, I found the sub in 2021 during the pandemic, and it was pretty, I mean, they called it the hate barn, which,
Yeah, yep,
was an appropriate name, it seemed.
for sure.
Although I tried, I just didn't know how, I felt sort of weird about everything, because I was not in the clique. I was a new member, and
Yeah, it
so
was hard. I think I
hard
hung out
gig.
in there a long time and would read the comments, and then if it was something really safe, I would chime in just once and
Right.
then slide back to the sidelines and just slowly had to build up that
That's kind of what I
becoming a part
tried
of the
as well.
community.
But
Yeah,
now on Discord, I find Discord much easier to use, a little more friendly, and so that's
yeah,
where
yeah,
I
I
go.
would agree. I'm not on there much, but yeah, I feel like anytime you could drop in and say just about anything and be just fine.
Right. Agreed. So what made you want to make shave soap in the first place? Like, yes, you got into wet shaving, and there's all of this
Hmm.
amazing stuff, and then take us through the thinking.
I think I was so excited.
Yeah,
I was I was kind of a guy lacking a hobby when I found wet shaving.
sure.
And so I was so excited to have a hobby. And honestly, was thinking about this as preparing for this. It kind of goes back to something that's been a topic on our subreddit a lot of just men's health
Yes.
and men making friends and connecting with other people, especially other men, but just having friends.
Yeah,
And so I think that was a big part of what made me love the community, want to be a bigger part or be deeper in it, I guess, than just a wet shaver.
sure.
And so, I tried, I think my first little project, I thought maybe I'll collect Gillette razors. Then I thought maybe I'll restore some old brushes. And I kind of just dabbled a little bit in the more like niche areas.
Yeah,
And then in talking with my wife, I kind of thought, well, why not we try making soap? Because I think it's even referenced on my website that she's really into cosmetics and stuff, and so it
yeah,
seemed like a good blending of our interests into one thing, I
absolutely.
guess.
Sure. Especially if you agree on it, that's a great side hobby or, extra
Yeah, for
curricular
sure.
thing to do with your wife. That's fantastic. So jumped in full on then. Not only collecting, but
Yep.
decided to make soap. Okay. And are you still a collector?
No, I mean you can see it. I know the listeners can't see but
Yes, I
most of
see the
my
shelf
collection's on
behind
the
you.
shelf behind me.
Okay.
That's yeah. So I don't know how many soaps
That's
are
the
up there. I haven't
extent of it.
counted for a while, but
That's reasonable. Very, very modest
50-ish.
even, I would say.
Yeah, 50-ish maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got I'd guess 20 razors, um, 15 brushes maybe. So I'm a collector, but it hasn't, that number's stayed pretty consistent, I guess, the last couple of years. So I'm not actively expanding my collection
Got
much
it.
unless something really special comes along.
For sure. And do you sell from time to time just to thin it
Yeah,
down?
yeah, I
Okay.
do. Yeah, again, not as much as I used to be on Shave Bazaar several times a day, both
Right.
selling, buying, trading.
Right.
Where now, yeah, occasionally, or my tastes change. I'll just realize I love this soap. Now
That's
I
what
don't so
happens.
much. So rather
Yeah.
than keeping it, I'll hop on there and try to sell it or something.
Okay. Some people, maybe like myself, hoard though. Everything I've bought, I try to
Yes,
sell. Mind you, I'm in Canada, so it's a bit of a different paradigm. It's not as easy.
for
Uh,
sure.
there's not as many of us, and the postage costs are ridiculous compared to the
Yeah,
US in any case. So that always leads to, just keeping it. But a buying addiction is a very real thing. So it's comforting to me to see,
yeah,
again, the listeners can't see, you have a very modest, reasonable collection, in my opinion, and very nicely stacked and
yeah, yeah.
orderly.
It really slowed down. Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
In all of that, do you
I
have a
think
favorite?
I've only
Yeah.
bought one. Oh, go ahead.
No, go on. Only about
I think
one.
I've only bought one soap this year, or roughly. So I
Again,
feel like that's pretty good
that is
tackling my addiction to only have bought one.
very good, especially, from the people that I speak to. That's on the lower end, I would think.
Yeah,
In
yeah. I
in
know Jeep's been on here, so
Yes, well, Jeep is the ultimate. We've also referenced Sugar Daddy.
yeah,
He apparently has a collection to
yeah, for sure.
to rival anyone's. Out of all the stuff you have,
Yeah,
do you have a favorite razor in all of that?
yeah. I think I have a lot of razors I really like, but I think the clear favorite for me is the Chiseled Face Legacy.
Interesting. Okay.
It's just beautiful and
Yeah.
it's a great shaver. And I think partially I have one of the original ones. I have number 6 from the
Nice.
original run, which just makes it even more special, I guess.
Absolutely. I have
But I
number
think,
75. I also love
oh,
mine,
nice.
but
Yeah.
go on. You were
Yeah.
saying?
For some reason, I had to sell everything. That would be the one that I'd keep.
Yeah. A man with good taste and sense, clearly. Now I have a question about a
Thank you.
product that you may, you're welcome. Uh, Remote learning. And I believe, was it called You Did This? It was a frag made for a specific user. I had a chance to smell it at the Maggard meetup 2 years ago because you sent it
I'm
along.
sorry. Yeah.
No, I mean, it was, it woke me up to the fact that really anything goes and that people in control of mastering scents and making, scent profiles can really take it to the nth degree. And that was proof of that. But I mean, I need to ask why?
So the whole history on remote learning, obviously it's connected to education during the pandemic.
Yes.
Um, there's a couple people who deserve credit, I guess, for the idea. The first is a guy named, oh, I can't remember his name, but he's the leader of the East Coast Wet Shavers group on Facebook. Just an awesome guy.
Okay.
And I know his name will pop into my head as soon as we get off the podcast, but
Or
that's a
or if it
great
does in the
Facebook shaving
meantime,
group. I want
you can
favorites.
just
Yeah,
blurt it out randomly if it comes to you.
yes. But it was originally his idea because he's also a teacher, and he kept saying,
Ah,
"Hey, you should make a remote learning soap."
right.
And then over on Instagram, there used to be a guy, I don't think he's active anymore, named Craving Shaving,
Okay.
which is just an interesting name. But he started off reviewing, and then he started turning. He turned handles for a while that were pretty good looking.
Yeah.
And he gave me the idea of, hey, you should make a Cheetos scented soap with Mountain Dew aftershave. So really, it was his. He was the one who gave me the scent. I took the name from the other guy, and then I thought, wouldn't it be funny to do pretend like this is an April Fool's Day thing, like pretty
Sure.
see-through April Fool's Day prank that nobody thinks I'm actually going to make it, but surprise, I actually make it.
Yeah.
And so I made two sets originally, gave one away on Instagram, gave one away on Reddit. And I can't remember who won it on Reddit. Um, but anyway, fast forward a year or two, I can't remember, and Prius is interviewing artisans for the Lather Games, and
Ah,
he asks, just as part of his interview questions, kind of as a joke, I think, hey, if a bunch of people wanted to buy remote learning, would you ever consider making it again?
yeah.
And I kind of stupidly said, well, if you can find 10 people who want to buy a cheese scented soap, sure, I'll make it again. Not
Yep.
thinking that anybody would want a cheese scented soap. And I was wrong. Um, so yeah, makes a post, collects names. I can't remember how many are on there. Somebody looked it up recently, but 40 plus people
Wow.
who want cheese scented soap and Mountain Dew scented aftershave. And so that's how that happened.
Okay.
And then the specific you did this after show. Oh, and I even made along with that, I did make a cheese EDP. So it wasn't
Amazing.
quite the same as, or I think it was cheese and Mountain Dew. So I combined all of the scents
Into the
together
EDP. That must have been something. Wow.
into the EDP. And the requirement was if you bought the set, you had to wear the EDP at least once.
Sure.
And I
Fair.
assume most people followed through or pretended to. But then you did this specifically came from Calzilla and his constant need to request Old Spice
Yes.
type scents.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if he ever suggested a cheesy one or if I suggested it just try to get him off my back.
Sure.
And it didn't work. And so I made that to try to get him off my back,
Oh, and
which
I
has been
guess
fun. I've loved reading his reactions, hearing all of you guys' reactions who were at Maggard that year and got to try it out.
yeah, it was quite something. Very unique. And I guess,
Yeah,
given that you mastered the Doritos cheese scent, why not apply it wherever you can? Was it a hard
yeah,
thing
yeah.
was it hard to develop that just from a
No, and I'll
blending?
be honest, that's very much taking fragrance oils in combining them into it's nothing. There's no fancy perfumery in that one.
Okay, interesting. And
Yeah,
you still have the recipe if ever there's, another
I
request.
do.
Right.
And I do for sure for remote learning. I don't know that I kept a recipe for you did this fragrance. It was
Um,
probably literally half and half an Old Spice dupe and half an
right.
cheese.
And better that there's no record of that, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
Have you done
And
a
that's
lot
one
of,
thing
sorry, go on.
I was just say, as you can see my shelf behind there, all of the white label or all of the tubs with white for the most part are summer break soaps
Ah,
scents. And there's every single soap I've ever made except for both versions of remote learning. I did not keep either of those because it was not the smell in my house when I made that was atrocious.
I could only imagine. I could only
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah. Nonetheless, it seems to be a sub favorite, just a niche favorite, a sort of a weird, odd thing. So good on you for making that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Sure. You've done some collabs before. One that comes to mind is one I had the honor of working on the label for, the But First Coffee with London Razors.
Hmm.
Any more in the pipeline, or have you done a lot of those in the past?
Yeah, so London Razors and I did three total collaborations.
Okay,
There was that one. There was Coffee and Contemplation, which I think is what kind of spawned the But First Coffee.
right.
And then there was Mountain Lord.
Ah,
And
okay.
all three were really incredible and
Yeah,
really fun. Um, Drew is easily one of my favorite. AH Joy, the guy who runs um, London Razors, is easily one of my favorite guys in the whole community. He hasn't been around much, I know. I know he's a busy guy, but I would not, if he messaged me at any time, that would go to the top of my to-do list to work with him again. So hint,
Fantastic.
hint, if you're listening.
That's right. And I know that
He did actually, it was a few years ago now.
yeah,
I haven't been to Maggard for this 3 or 4 years, I guess, was the last time I went. And when I was there, he was there and he handed me some scents he was working on kind of with the intention of we're going to build on one of these, but it's just been a crazy few years and we just haven't, nothing ever took off, I guess,
fair enough. But here's hoping that you'll rekindle that because it's always leads to great products.
for sure.
You've said before that you really rely heavily on nostalgia for your scents. Are the ideas something that just come to you, or is it way more intentional than that?
You, it's always kind of interesting how some of them work because I have some sense, I think, where I like wood shop is a very clear, I have a very clear picture in my head
Yeah.
of what I want it to smell like.
Okay.
And then there's other scents that I just start creating and then, oh, lost my phone mount. Where I just start creating and then it reminds me of something or I take it in a different direction.
Right.
So a good example of that would be Field Day was originally my kind of goal was to create the smells of the farm that I grew up on.
Yeah.
Um, but it just, I wasn't capturing that, but instead I was capturing more the fresh green grass. And so it kind of evolved into in a different direction, I guess, than I originally intended.
Interesting. It's interesting because nostalgia and sort of scent recall and memory is a very important thing for all of these scents. And to me, at least, that's what gets me with a lot of these artisan products. It really brings back a memory or triggers something. So, I can imagine that that's a pretty important thing
For sure.
in scent creation. So it's great that you rely heavily on the nostalgia of stuff, especially some of your products. I mean, I shaved this morning
Yeah.
with Daydream, and that certainly the label. I mean,
Hmm.
we'll talk about your labels in a moment, but it just does it for me on so many levels. The smells, the imagery,
Hmm.
it really takes you somewhere. So I appreciate it. I'm sure that many of the other users do as well.
Yeah, I think that's easily one of my favorite parts about wet shaving. One of my favorite scents ever is I probably butcher it because it's probably a French pronunciation, but Vita Poche um, by
V-
Chef
v-
Lu um,
vide poche,
is
which means
just
empty pocket.
Vide Push. Is that how you'd say it?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
All
I
right,
live in
that's
a
good to know.
French
I didn't know
place.
that.
So, yeah. Vide
Yeah,
is
yeah, I
empty
figured you would know.
and poche is pocket. So empty pocket or
Okay,
pockets. Yeah.
that's great to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and despite the fact that iris, the flower, does not exist in the scent notes for that scent,
Yeah.
that's what I smell when I smell it. And that
Right.
reminds me, both my mom and my grandma had just iris gardens that were massive. And so that scent takes me to being a kid like nothing else I've ever
Sure.
experienced.
And I really love how scent can do that and trigger that.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
such a nice appeal to this wet shaving world, especially discovering it. It's like, wow, all of these grown men talking about scent nuances,
Yeah,
fragrance and stuff. It's quite something.
it is. And out of all of my scents, I think the one that does that by far the most is Cannonball.
Right.
And just the number of stories I've read from again grown men talking about it brought me back to being a kid at the pool and
Sure.
like it just so it's neat to read that and to give people that experience.
Yeah, it is. And the label too,
Yes,
conveys that perfectly.
for sure.
I know you've mentioned actually that if you had to do it all over again, you would have put more emphasis on label art and design from the very beginning.
Yeah,
Are you satisfied with where your branding is at now?
yeah, for sure. um and I know I actually most recent episode I listened to of your podcast was with Wise One.
Sure.
um and so yeah, I think he nailed it perfectly
Yep.
of I'm probably either the easiest customer, and you could tell me from the graphic design point of view, to have a customer who just says, "Hey, this is what it smells like. Good luck."
It's,
Um,
you know,
yeah,
it's a pleasure. type of client that everyone dreams of, but it's a testament to your understanding, yours and Wise
Yeah,
One's
exactly.
connection and understanding, because it's not everyone that can jam like that, if you will. You just say, here's the cent notes and do whatever you think, and it's something that appeals to you. That's a wonderful working
Yeah,
relationship. Keep that designer is my advice.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's just his ability. I mean, my branding, he is really my branding. I
that's
have the
great.
school theme and stuff, but just the way he's made that professional,
Yeah,
but still captured the fun, the
right.
nostalgia. Um, yeah, it's just it is so lucky that his styles fit so perfectly because yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I'll repeat it. I mean, I've said it in other interviews. When I first got in being a graphic artist, I looked around and saw all of these labels and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. How I would love to design something like this.
Yeah,
I quickly realized that Wise One had a hand in much of that. So I tip my hat to him and
yeah.
his immense talent. And certainly for your brand, it works wonders. So that's
Well,
great.
and it's crazy too to think that when he did, so Prom King was the first label he did for me,
Okay.
and I believe um, that that was his first label in wet shaving.
Oh, no
Like,
kidding. Okay.
and then just how much he's exploded. Yeah, and that was originally a our wet shaving exclusive, and just how
Ah,
it exploded to now where he's done
he's the
such a
he's
huge percentage
that's it.
of labels in the
He's the
community.
go-to artist,
But
which is
yeah,
great.
exactly.
Fantastic. And I guess you guys met on
But yeah, just
IRC
to
or
go back to the
something.
question too. Yeah, yeah, I think that's where we first started chatting.
Right.
And I can't remember. I'm guessing somebody might have mentioned, well, it was probably at the time, there was somebody around named Steelers Rock. I don't know if you overlapped with him at all.
The username sounds familiar. Yeah.
He was kind of, him and Jeep had a lot in common. Like where Jeep is now was where Steelers Rock was before he kind of lost the thrill.
Okay.
But Steelers Rock was the one who kind of organized the Prom King sub exclusive. And I
Ah,
think it was probably him who was like, hey, you're a graphic artist, and kind of connected the two dots, I guess,
yeah.
and put us together.
Fantastic.
But yeah, just to go back to the original question of focusing on the art,
Yes.
that's an area just where the artisan side of this has changed so much. Because when I started in 2018 when we opened, you could get away with my or not hand drawn, my homemade art, I
Yeah.
guess, and still have a chance to succeed. But if I were to try to launch now with that original label art, there's no way.
That's interesting. So are you saying the standards have increased in terms of expectations just for good art on the tubs?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And just being good all around, but especially the art. I feel like if you pulled up Magger's website and you're going to buy the better looking product if they have similar scent notes or similar, in most ways are similar, you're going to choose the one with the more professional looking art most of the time.
Right. I mean, at a certain point, speaking for
And I,
myself at least, I become loyal to certain artisans because I either really, really like their base
oh,
or
for
really
sure.
like what they do. But yes,
Yeah.
right off the cuff or off the
Yeah.
shelf,
If you're,
I would choose
yeah.
something based on its
Yeah.
art.
I think you can get away. Yeah. If you have a loyal following, I think you're okay. But if
Right.
you were just starting out, it would be hard to make it that far.
Sure.
And I think in that way, the barrier for entry, at least on the software side of artisans, has gone up pretty significantly compared to where it was 7 years ago when I started.
Indeed. How about AI in all of this?
Yeah. Um, I don't know. I don't like it's funny to play around with AI prompting, I think,
Yes.
but I just can't stand it when I'm scrolling through Instagram. Like it's just so obvious when you see, I mean, there's a couple soap companies that are very clear offenders
Yes.
in that in my mind, and it's not hard to tell, I guess.
I agree. It's not, I guess that'll become harder and harder as time
Yeah,
evolves, but for now, you're right. And I imagine as an educator, anything sort of chat GPT generated must be
Yeah,
quite maddening.
yeah. Well, and I actually had this conversation with my students. I had a few students who were really artistic, and just how even when AI art looks really nice, it doesn't have a soul. And
That's
it's
right.
hard to define what that means, but I feel like anybody who's seen AI art knows exactly what I'm saying, where there's no soul there.
Yes, I agree. And it's generated by a machine. So
Yeah, so there couldn't be.
no, they could not be. As soon as there are, or as soon as there is, I think we're in trouble as a species. But
Yeah,
for now,
for
I
sure.
agree with you. I agree. Do you think
Yeah,
that, do you think that there seems to be a delay in our communication here, eh?
I've noticed that too. I don't know
Okay, so I'll
why.
well, I don't know. Well, I mean, I'm all the way up in Canada. It's the long pipeline. It's the wire they're running to
Yeah,
connect
yeah,
us.
that must be it.
I don't know. I'll take that into account though, and not be so hasty with my insistence on a response. Do you think that wet shavers have a higher average IQ than most people?
I think that wet shavers probably certainly think that they do,
That's
um, but I'm
exactly.
guessing probably not. And that's one of the interesting things just about doing IQ testing or any similar testing is that most of us are average,
Sure.
and that's okay.
Yeah. I think that's the intention. But I love
Yeah,
your
yeah,
answer.
exactly. Yeah, we certainly think we're smarter than everybody else because we're saving money, but then spend way more money.
Way more money, yes. And like I've said in
Yeah,
other episodes, I've gotten into straight razors lately. That's a whole other level of, more money.
yeah,
Fun, but more money.
yeah, for sure.
Do you use other artisan products? I guess so. I mean, I can see the listeners cannot see the shelf behind you, although much of it is your own
Yeah,
product. Any
yeah, yeah, roughly about half of it.
yeah,
Um, my favorite, or probably the company that exists most on that shelf, other than mine, is Declaration.
okay,
I've got more of their stuff than anybody else's. Um, but when I was still more avidly collecting, I kind of made it my rule to almost exclusively buy from artisans who posted on Reddit.
sure.
And so most of those artisans are represented up there.
Okay.
Um, Probably the company I order from most, though, would be Sterling,
Yeah,
just because I like their coffee. And so I'll order coffee and bath soap and shampoo bars and just load it up with other software other than soap and aftershave.
absolutely. And they have such a massive offering in terms of different scents
They
and
do, yeah.
products, plus coffee, like you said. So I
Yep.
understand why. With the declaration, do you have a preference? Nuanced question, but a preference, a favorite base, I should ask.
Yeah, I think Bison was probably my favorite base of his.
Okay.
They're all great, but
Yeah,
I think, and I don't know if that's, like if I lathered up, blind lathered a couple, I would be surprised if I could tell you which one was Bison. It might just be a nostalgia or that was when I really fell in love with them kind of thing.
right.
Because yeah, his are all so excellent.
Yes, agreed. Because you've been around for such a while, do you have any shaving lore, any good lore that you'd like to share? I'm not necessarily looking for anything contentious. Other people that I've interviewed were happy to sort of air some dirty laundry, but that's not necessarily what I'm after, just because you're a long-standing member of the community. Anything fun to reminisce about or such?
I was trying to think of a good answer to this question, and I listened to Steven. I mean, he knows everything.
Right.
So it was fascinating to take a walk down memory lane with Steven in that episode. Um, I certainly don't have much that's contentious, but I did think of he touched on it a little bit, but just how 2017, 2018-ish was such a crazy time as far as software artisans went on our wet shaving.
Yeah.
Um, because he mentioned several of the companies, but I was just going to add to that because kind of how it went from my perspective was Storybook Soapworks was kind of the first one, I think, again from my perspective, because this was right when I was joining the subreddit, who kind of gave the impression that, oh, anybody can do this.
Right.
He was able to launch his company in a very professional way with really, really good stuff. Um, and I think that kind of inspired the next wave of us, which consisted of Noble Otter, I think was the next one that I remember.
Okay.
Um, and it's just amazing to look at where Noble Otter is now, like
Yes.
just how they went from just launching on the sub to being easily one of the biggest brands out there, which is super cool.
Yeah.
So Noble Otter came along, and then there was another company who was called West of Olympia.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that one?
I have not. That was, I guess, before my time.
Yeah, yeah, they were really good. Um, and their owner was just awesome. Him and I communicated a lot, and I think gave each other a lot of good advice. So there was West of Olympia, and then I believe Steven came next, and Courtney with Southern Witchcrafts,
Yeah.
and then came me only a couple months after them. Like this again is happening within, I think between Noble Otter and me was less than a year. So four
Wow.
companies all launching within the exact same our wet shaving was our home base kind of thing.
Sure. That's
Um,
incredible.
and I think there were several companies launching from Instagram, from Facebook, from various forums
Yeah.
at that same time. And then not long after that, there was also another company called Red Panda Grooming that only made it a couple releases, but again was the releases he had were really pretty darn good.
Okay.
And so just yeah, just what a hectic, crazy time that was to think that what six, I assume six brands launched within a year and a half roughly of each other.
And so that, would you say that that was the golden age of wet shaving, from your perspective?
I think, yeah, I'd say that was from my perspective kind of the beginning of the golden age.
Right.
Um, because out of those companies, almost all of us made it through. And the two that didn't, Red Panda and West of Olympia, I don't think either of them didn't make it because they didn't have a good product. It was simply, I think you get into this sometimes and realize this is a lot of work
Of course.
or can be a lot of work. And so I think that was probably where they kind of jumped off the train. But yeah, for the fact that Noble Otter's huge, I guess Storybook also went as he got busy, but Noble Otter's huge. Southern Witchcrafts was huge.
Yeah.
Me, not as big, but still hanging around.
Sure.
So I think that kind of started that golden age.
Has summer break soaps been more successful than you thought it might be?
I would say so.
That's great.
Um, looking back when I started, I don't know. It seems crazy, like why I ever thought I should do this.
Well,
Um,
look at you now.
and yeah, yeah, and going through all of the steps, like again, I had this, well, I'm going to start a soap company, and then not just going through all the steps of, well, starting a business, the actual business side of things, not the soap making side, was just so much more work than I ever would have guessed.
For
And
sure.
again, I was just naive. I'm sure most people could would have figured that out, but I was naive about it.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for artisans, or in my case, I'm an artist. I'm a graphic artist. I'm not a businessman, but I've learned to become a
Hmm.
businessman to be able to sell my wares and set up a business
For
and
sure.
deal with taxation and the government and all of that. So, to your point, it's not always obvious. It's someone who just wants to make
Yeah.
soap. What do they need to know about, 401ks or whatever? I don't know too much about American ins and outs of American
Hmm.
business, but I know that term. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So that was all crazy. And then, it was pretty steady business, I think, for a couple years. It didn't take as long as other businesses to break even,
okay,
which was a great feeling to get back to zero and
sure.
then start making money. Not a lot of money, but being in the positive felt really nice. And then, yeah, kind of starting that 2019 and then into the pandemic. it really exploded. I mean, it
Right.
was making some money. And again, not a lot of money. I didn't quit my job, but it was nice.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
and I don't even know why or what changed. Obviously, the pandemic was a whole other thing because people were bored and at home and shopping and
Right.
just in a weird space. But yeah, and then now I think it's kind of slowed down again. And part of that is my own doing, is I don't put nearly as much time into it as I could, I guess.
How much time do you actually have to devote to soap making, handle turning, and such?
That's a that's a great question, and not a lot. Um, that's a big part of the name, I guess, is that yeah, this time of year I start to have a little more time to do things.
Yeah.
Um, I'm getting started on some handles again. Finally, I haven't had a handle drop probably since August or September of last year, so really more summer with those.
Okay. People love your shampoo bars. They're very highly lauded. Can you explain to me, this bald man here, what that's all about? I had never even considered a shampoo bar back when I had hair, that is.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know why, or really, I enjoy shampoo bars, and I think it kind of presented a challenge, I guess, of can I do this?
Right.
I had tried out Mickey Leap's Soapworks had some great shampoo bars when they were around. Sterling has some great shampoo bars, and so I had used those for a while just to experiment
Yeah.
and just as an excuse to buy more soap, I guess, that wasn't shaving soap.
Yeah.
Um, and so then, yeah, it kind of came. I think I took it as a challenge of can I make this? Um, and so, I mean, if you look, are there benefits to shampoo bars? I'm sure you can find all kinds of pseudoscientific stuff, probably some real
Sure.
scientific stuff, but really, for me, it's just kind of a fun way to make soap.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think most people that use them kind of enjoy them. It's a different, less full of other junk
that's
that
true.
like the liquid shampoos typically have. So
Right. And more compact and easy to manage,
yeah,
take with you and such. Makes
they
sense to
also
me.
make really, I mean, a lot of people I know use shampoo bars just as regular soap. They have a
Oh, okay.
higher superfat concentration typically, so they leave your skin feeling more soft,
Oh,
more, they're less cleansing, less drying typically.
good to know. Good to know. Maybe I'll try one for my typically dry skin, even though
Yeah.
I have no hair. Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you found the time, I know you've spoken about it in the past, to dive deeper into the world of perfumery?
A little bit. There was definitely some times, especially again, probably pandemic times, where I did really start to research and start to go that direction. Um, because there was actually a time during that year, I would say, where I seriously considered making this my full-time job.
Okay.
Sales were good enough that I felt like if I dedicated more time, I could have made it a full-time job.
Yeah.
Now looking back, I'm really grateful I didn't because I think it would have been really hard to maintain that level of business.
Yes.
Um, but so yeah, I've gone a little bit in that direction, but I'm certainly nowhere near what many of the others like Ben obviously would be at the top of that peak of artisan soap makers who have switched entirely to the world of perfumery.
Sure. Right.
Um, yeah, he's at the peak of the mountain. I'm just kind of maybe a little up the bottom of the hill, I guess.
Fair enough. You're still interested in it though?
Yeah, I would say so.
That's good. So then,
I kind of I don't know if I'd say it a problem. It's a good thing and a bad thing where if I if I start or try to learn about something, I have a hard time letting it go.
right.
But I also have a habit of collecting new things to learn about and then very much limiting the amount of time I can spend on any individual subject.
Makes sense. Curious by nature though. That's what that
Yeah,
says. Right.
yeah,
Excellent. Do you have a favorite scent note? Speaking of perfume.
yeah. Um, I mean, Lavender is certainly up there.
Okay,
I mean, I've released three different lavender scents, and I just really it was one that drew me to wet shaving, I guess.
interesting.
But I would say probably my most favorite though is neroli.
Yeah,
It's I don't know why I just really enjoy it. Um, I think it's a neat note to use in different ways. Although I think it's only made it into one of my scents so far. It was in Homecoming.
okay. That was my next question, but you answered it. Okay. Do you still restore shaving brushes?
No, I mean I would if I happened to be at an antique store and one that I thought was neat, I
Yeah.
would probably restore it. Um, but I don't actively seek them out. I'm not on eBay looking for them or anything like that.
Okay. And is it a complicated process to actually restore a brush?
Not really. At least not to the way I would do it. I couldn't have, at least at the time. Now I could probably try to do something really creative if I've got a little more skills now, I guess, with things like that. But I wouldn't have, if it had cracks or anything, I wouldn't go as far as to try to fix that.
Okay.
So really, it was more polishing, sanding, polishing, repainting the like tiny little letter indents
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Neat.
One of them, the one I still regularly use is it was an old, the company was called Solid Set,
Yeah.
and I've got a Declaration B3 knot in it. Is the only one that's still regularly in my rotation. But I went back and kind of redid it a couple of years ago too, just because I knew better now how to polish
Yeah.
and get it a lot shinier than I did when I first started.
Fair enough. And that's from having turned so many handles or the experience of brush handle making.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. I think and just it probably came from of sanding and polishing takes a long time.
Right. Of
So
course.
when I first was doing that, I rushed it, and where now my standards for shiny are a lot higher than they would have been.
Yeah. Are there a certain amount of brushes or brush handles, I should say, that you try to turn every year or something like that? Or it's just random?
Yeah, pretty random. This last year, so I'd went through a period where I had poured a lot of blanks. And
Okay.
so last summer, my goal was to eliminate my stock of blanks,
Oh,
and I did. Um, Typically, I think last summer I bet I dropped 10 to 16 a month, depending on if I got one to
wow.
two drops done.
Yeah.
But then pretty this year I didn't get any done the rest of the
Right.
year. So if I could hit 30 this summer, I'd be pretty darn happy.
That's a good goal. And I know that they're in
Yeah.
demand. I have one
Yeah.
that I bought actually from
Oh, do
Ben.
you?
I
Oh,
got it from
nice.
Ben and it has a B11 declaration knot in it, which it's a beautiful
Oh, awesome.
brush. Really, really love it. So yes, the fans are waiting for more.
Yeah.
Something that I pulled out of my research, and I'm going to mention it because I'm terribly immature and it makes me giggle. You had said it took you some time to sort out plastic orifice reducers for the aftershave, I guess.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say a plastic orifice reducers. To me, that conjures up something really, uh, wonderful is maybe a bit of a strong word, but
Yeah.
thank you for saying that.
No,
That's it.
honestly, I think that was probably the most single frustrating thing about opening the
Really.
company was number one, figuring out that they're called orifice reducers.
Right. I didn't know that
I had
either.
no idea.
No,
Yeah, like Googling plastic size reducers in bottles, like try it to figure out the term, and then to find the right size that fit the right neck of the bottle, like it was just stupidly complicated.
it's amazing to me that there are even options. And I have to ask that if you're Googling it by its proper name, you must get some really interesting search results, perhaps.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't Googled it since then.
No,
I found my supplier and I have stuck with them the entire time and not, so I know it works. And
easy.
then
Yeah.
Yeah.
A question du jour, to use a bit more French. Do tariffs affect you in any way? In any of this, North American trade war going on? Or global trade war, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, evolving by the day.
Really?
I haven't, I mean, it doesn't affect me. I guess just trying to make sense of it all is
Right.
just crazy. I'm a small enough producer, and I also have not had to make a big supply purchase
Okay.
for a while, at least since all of this has been going on. And so, no, right at this point, I haven't seen any effects, but eventually
Good.
we'll see when I have to make a big soap supply purchase. I
Fair
also don't
enough.
I ship very little international, so I haven't had to deal with it on from that side of things.
Right. That was actually my next question. I know that way back when you first started, you sold through top of the chain in Canada. I'm wondering if you plan to do so
Hmm.
again, because as a Canadian, I would love access to your
I mean,
products, locally.
yeah,
Locally. I say that in air quotes.
for sure. And I'm torn on the top of the chain is great. I'm kind of at a crossroads, I think, for summer break soaps. And honestly, this is the first time I've kind of talked about it. I'm kind of toying with, and I think we'll likely go the route of Spearhead of
Okay.
only self-distributing.
Huh.
Um, and I hate to, and I haven't solidified those plans. And every vendor I've worked with in the history, I mean, some have come and gone, and some consistently carry my products have been amazing.
Sure.
Maggard is great to work with. The Razor Company is great to work with, and then Anti-Catura
Yeah.
in Slovenia is incredible to work with. And honestly, just a side note, being able to tell people, because sometimes people go, oh, you make soap. Yeah, and it's available in a store in Slovenia for shipping
Right.
worldwide.
That's
It's
good
just such a
clout. Yeah.
cool thing to be able to say. Um, and so I'd love, if Carmine's his name, right?
Top of the
From Top of
chain.
the
Yeah.
Chain.
Yep.
Yeah. If he contacted me today and placed an order, I'd gladly send him some stuff. Because I'd love knowing that you guys up there, people all over the world can get my products.
Sure.
Um, but at the same time, I'm kind of getting to this. I guess the hard part of working with vendors is keeping them up to date with everything.
Right.
I feel like right now I couldn't drop just a fun cent because it becomes a process of how much do you guys want to order? Okay, when are you going to order it? And it's
Sure.
where if I were to switch back to self-distribution, I could do something really weird. I could drop some discontinued scent and just say, hey, there's 20 of these. You guys want them? Cool.
Yeah.
And just have them on the website. They sell, they don't, either way. Um, and so I think more than likely that'll probably be the way that I eventually go is just back to self-distribution.
Okay.
So not a
Interesting.
great answer for you guys up in Canada, I guess. But
No, but creates the demand and the FOMO most certainly. For a long time when I first started, I went nuts and bought everything to the
yeah,
point
yeah,
that I had a US, I mean, it's a service that's offered, but a US mailing address so that I
yeah,
could get US shipping. And then it's basically a customs brokerage. So it would end up
uh-huh,
costing a lot more to get all the products, but I could get anything I wanted, including
yeah,
alcohol-based stuff. So
yeah.
where there's a will, there's a way. I wonder what that's like right now with tariffs. I haven't
That's a
tried.
great question.
I wonder.
I Yeah, I know I have several customers, especially I think in Asian countries that do
Right.
that. They'll
Okay.
have a shipping address somewhere on the West Coast that'll be have a whole bunch of numbers in it, so you know it's in some locker
That's
getting
it.
collected to go to. So yeah, but I don't think I've had one of those for a little while. So I do wonder how tariffs are impacting that.
I think I would dare say, or speaking for myself, in any case, everyone's quite hesitant right now just to see how it all plays out. And
Yeah.
I'm personally, well, the Canadian dollar is weak, and tariffs on top of that, it's a
Hmm.
real discouraging thing to, spend freely and order. I mean, besides, I have over 100 soaps, so I think I have enough soap for the rest of my life and my
Yeah.
child's life, maybe. So there's that too,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
I've read that you're an avid runner. Is that the case?
Yeah, at least I like to think of myself like an avid runner.
Okay,
As I get older, I seem to constantly manage to injure myself in some sort of way that'll knock me back down for a little while, but
sure.
I do
Well,
try to run
I mean,
a good chunk of the time.
the big question is, what are you running from?
That's a good question.
Yes.
Probably old age, I
There
guess
you
would be
go.
the answer to that question.
It's interesting. My father was a marathon runner and was a
Really?
fanatic marathon runner, so it was maybe slightly traumatizing to me as a child, although I can appreciate
Yeah.
the benefits of, cardiovascular benefits, that is, of running. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of fun and it feels great when you get into not, I've never ran a marathon. I've done a couple half marathons,
Okay.
but to be in that good a shape feels, you just feel really good about yourself.
Sure.
Um,
I wouldn't know, but
yeah.
maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
Do
But again,
you
like, yeah, now I managed to, maybe I'll do it again and then I'll injure my ankle or my hip or my knee or some part of me decides to give up for a while.
Getting old is not fun. Not fun at
No.
all. So again, I think most people know you're a proud Nebraskan. That's where you reside. I was
Hmm.
looking, there was some reference to Nebraska state slogans. And the current one is
Yeah.
another day in the dusty plains. Is it that dusty in Nebraska?
It's not. And I'm actually, this just shows you how bad of a job they've done with this. I didn't even realize that it had changed since what's the other one?
The other
It's
one
not for
was,
everyone.
yeah, honestly, it's not for everyone. From a
Yeah.
marketing standpoint, I don't see how that is very successful
No.
unless you want to prevent people from coming and visiting your state.
Yeah. And I think, I know with that one, they would pair it with like images that you didn't think of when you thought of Nebraska, like some of the forests. And I know like one of the images was of I think we have one waterfall in the state that's like 15 feet. So it's not
Okay.
real exciting.
Yes.
Um, and so, yeah, I didn't even know about this Dusty Plains one, which seems to be totally opposite of what the last one was.
Well, the first one fell or the last one fell flat, so why not
That's
go
true.
completely in the opposite direction?
Yeah. Because
But it
no, I wouldn't think of Nebraska as a dusty place.
right. Nor
Because
would I.
most of it is, yeah, it's covered in farmland,
Right.
or even the pasture land is at least covered in grasses that may be brown part of the year, but it's not dusty because there's plants and grasses everywhere. It's not
Sure.
like, I don't know, places like Texas or Arizona where it's just dirt.
Dirt and dusty indeed.
Yeah. So no, that's news to me that that's the slogan. So clearly
Okay.
this one's not doing well either.
No, I guess not. Or I was a bit surprised by it in any case. But to you, what's
Although
great? Oh, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, to be fair, I guess maybe I haven't seen it because they don't have to advertise Nebraska to Nebraskans. So
Fair.
maybe people in other states see it and I just don't.
Right. Right. Makes sense. What's great to you about Nebraska, or specifically Kearney, Nebraska?
Yeah, I do love this state, and there's a lot of things I don't love, but I think most people could say that. But I've had a great experience here. Um, Kearney, the city where I live in now, I've lived here for, let's see, how many years? 12 or 13 years.
Okay.
And it's just a really cool, depending on the size of place where, everybody's from. For Nebraska, it's a city of about a little over 30,000 people, and that's pretty big. It's one of the bigger cities in Nebraska.
Yeah,
I know for many of your listeners, 30,000 is a small town.
sure.
Um,
But I think it's the
but
fifth biggest
it's
city I read in Nebraska.
yeah, yeah,
Kearney is, yeah.
yeah, and a couple of those. I mean, Nebraska is an interesting place because Omaha far and away is the biggest. Lincoln far and away is the second biggest.
Okay.
And then I think two of the next biggest on the list are suburbs of Omaha, essentially.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, the population is all in that part of the state essentially.
Right.
But Kearney's just it's literally in the very middle of the state.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't be more central in the state or in the United States
That's
than
right.
Kearney. It's like right. there.
Right in the middle of
Um,
America. Yeah. Amazing.
yeah. And we have a branch of the university here, which makes the town, it makes it different, I guess, than the other towns in central Nebraska. And
Okay.
it's just a nice town to raise a family in, I guess.
Sure. I've read that there are 6 golf courses in Kearney. Do you golf?
I had to think about that when I saw that on your list of
Did
questions
you?
of
Yeah.
what were the six? But I was able to think of all of them. I used to
Okay.
golf in college. I had a couple of roommates that we would golf fairly regularly, but I
Right.
haven't golfed much lately. I pretty much found that anytime I golf a hole or two in, I would think to myself, why am I paying so much money to just be pissed off?
Right. Fair. Fair point.
That's how golf typically goes for me.
Okay. So I understand. I was also reading that a gentleman named John Bokenkamp, from who created the series Blacklist, which is a pretty popular series, is a
Yeah.
local. Do you know him?
Yep. I do not.
No.
I don't think he lives here, but he comes back every now and then and he'll
Does
do
he? Okay.
charity things. Or
Nice.
we have a pretty cool, like old restored theater downtown that, especially when Blacklist was really, really going on really big, they made a huge deal out of. You could go watch each episode
Oh,
there
that's fun.
with the
Amazing.
community and stuff. So yeah, I don't know him, but it is pretty neat. And he's been pretty supportive of the community.
That's wonderful. And are you a native Nebraskan?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up about 4 hours west of where Kearney is. So
Okay.
the town I grew up in is literally almost Wyoming.
Wow.
It's pretty darn close to the border. And so that's where I grew up on my parents' farm. And we're actually headed out there this weekend to go visit and stuff. So,
Amazing. So they're still in the same place.
yep, yep, they are.
Fantastic. And what was it like growing up on a farm? So I'm an urban boy. I have no concept whatsoever of what that might be like. Seems very
Yeah,
free and peaceful though.
yeah, I loved it. And I love the community I live in for my kids, but there's definitely times where I wish they had more of that freedom. So I'm glad that my parents still live out there and we can go visit and spend
For
time out
sure.
there. And
Wonderful.
because yeah, it's just, and it helps too that so the city I grew up in was about 7,000 people.
Oh
And
wow.
so Kearney to me seems big at
Big city.
30,000.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah, where that is was still smaller and just yeah, again that freedom, the not having neighbors. I still can't get used to having neighbors. If I had a chance to move outside of town, I certainly would.
Right. It's interesting. And whereas I live in a city that has, I think, 3.5 million people, and it's a small city by, big city standards. So it's all relative.
Yeah, yeah,
But I too,
yeah. Well, that's
I
twice the size of my state, I think. So
right. Yeah. Yet pales in comparison to, cities like New York or Chicago and such.
yeah, yeah.
So it's all relative. So you said right at the beginning of our chat, and so I think you're participating again in the Lather Games this year.
Yep, yep, I am number nine.
Amazing. And you sort of put maximum effort and post every day and all of that, or it's just a little dabbling?
Yeah, I think the very first year, I didn't because I think I probably had like six soaps at the time, and I was still very new. And the
Sure.
lather games was actually probably how I started posting in our wet shaving
Okay.
because it was I don't know, it made it less scary to make that leap and start posting.
Yeah.
Um, but since then, every other year I've posted. Yeah, I'll shave every day. I'll hopefully hit the themes every day. I think I'll have to better double check my calendar. I think I got everything covered, but
Cool.
I don't. There was probably a couple years where I put a good chunk of effort in. I know there's a couple years where I tried to do a very nice shave of the day shot every
Yeah.
day. Um, but I'm no Prius or no Cosmo Barber or
It's a whole other
any of the
level.
legends
Right.
who have won the thing. I'm not looking to win, but if I can sneak in the 20s, 30s somewhere, I'm pretty happy.
That's great. Do you get prizes? Do you rank high enough to
Yeah, yeah, I think I've got a prize I think every year.
that's great.
Usually just a set or a $15 gift card, which is
Sure, but
great. I would do it if,
yeah,
even if I didn't get a prize, I'd still do it.
I think many people would too. I have to agree with you. I've ranked the 3 years that I've played as well, but I would do it even without. It's so much fun. It's a
It is. It's a good time.
great thing to hide from my girlfriend for the month of June.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's always awkward. It's weird that, I mean, some of the stuff people do just blows my mind because I don't know how they do it. But one challenge I remember of just, I think it was the first year they did the side challenges and you had to shave in the kitchen and you had to wear a hat. And I
Right.
just remember being so embarrassed, even though my wife helped me start a business and is well aware of all this stuff, but still just being embarrassed of,
Like, what
well,
are you
why are
doing?
you in the kitchen?
Yeah, that's
I got
right.
to
Why are
shave in
you
the
shaving?
kitchen and
Yeah.
just,
Whereas some people
yes,
take it to the next level and shave on, public
yeah,
transport or something to that
yeah,
effect.
just,
So yes, it's most impressive. I remember the year I started, it was Jungilla, I believe, who won the Lather Games, who I don't know if you remember this. He
oh,
coordinated, I don't even know how he did it. He had his mobile shave den and he was shaving in a square, a
I
public
do
square
remember that.
during the pandemic without a
Yes,
mask, and someone came and chewed him out for that. And it was just captured it by public security cameras, or I don't, it was so involved and so
yeah,
beyond that I was like, who are these crazy people? And this is fantastic. I have to get involved. And
y-
so, yeah.
yeah, that was a good one.
So I'm glad to hear you're participating, and I look forward to this year's challenge. On that note, though, well, not really that note, but are you also attending the 2025 annual Wally Derby?
So I don't even know what that is.
Me neither. I looked it up and it came up. It looks like it's some annual fishing contest in your part of the world.
Oh,
Could
all
that
right.
be? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know. I'm not a fisher.
Fair enough. I like just throwing random things out and seeing if they stick. So I guess that one did not. Forget it. Don't go to the Wally
That's
Derby,
funny. It would have been funny if it did.
right?
I actually assumed when I saw that on the list that Wally Gator was running some side contest in the
That would be good.
Lather Games.
Maybe. Well,
Yeah,
not to my knowledge, but Wally, if you're listening, then here's your opportunity,
yeah,
right?
no kidding.
And we thank you in advance for it, of course.
Yeah.
So, pardon me if, I shouldn't announce this, but I will anyway. Do you think you'll have time to continue running summer break soaps with your upcoming new role?
That's a great question. Um, and just anybody who's listening, I've wondered how to talk about this on the sub because I try to keep my lives a little separate.
Right.
But I think this is an important one. But yeah, I am taking on a principal position at a school, really a unique school, um, starting this coming school year. And so that's going to take up a good chunk of my time.
I imagine. And
I have no
congratulations.
plans. I Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm super excited. It's a really cool opportunity. Um, I have no plans whatsoever to stop summer break soaps. I love it so much. I've put in so much work. But that is a big factor, like I said earlier, about considering switching to only distributing my own stuff kind
Sure.
of model, just to not have that outside pressure of having to fulfill a wholesale order. Um,
That
Because I
makes sense.
definitely have a personality where if Maggard were to place an order today that I couldn't fill with what's on my shelf, I'm going to stay up tonight
Make it
trying to
happen.
make as much of it as I can so that it can start curing, so that I hate having an order out there that needs to be filled, but I can't get filled yet.
I understand.
And so, yeah, so having taking away that pressure and just knowing that I can do things at my own pace would maybe ease the pressure of that changing role a little bit.
That makes a lot of sense. And from a consumer standpoint, I would say it would even increase the FOMO in terms of, your many of your products would be sort of borderline unobtainium, therefore.
Yeah, yeah, 'cause you never know. And maybe I only have a couple available at a time, or maybe I'll just make some random only neroli soap that I'm just going to do once, or
Right.
give me freedom to do weird stuff. Probably not cheese soap weird, but
Hopefully not.
less weird than that.
Right. I like that a lot. Although I would be sad to not have access, mind you, as long as top of the chain doesn't carry it these days, I don't really have access. But I will.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I mean, I just did, I don't, I'm not going to take credit, but I certainly emailed Carmen at top of the chain to say, hey, Katie's Bubbles has a new product called Crangere. Can you please order some? And he
Yeah.
did, and I bought.
Hmm.
So that's often how it works. So I'll be emailing him about summer break soaps. So before you go
Nice. I
all
appreciate that.
self-distributed, maybe we can get an order in for us Canadians.
Yeah. And, I think that's probably the hardest part. And I'm still thinking about that of, if top of the chain or some other company wanted to supply, could I have some sort of deal just to make it more worldwide? Same with
Right.
Anticatura,
Yeah.
just to, because I do just hate to say, sorry, guys, you have to pay $40 for shipping or whatever
Right.
insane amount Shopify
Yeah.
puts as the charge.
But again,
So,
I think that many Canadians see it as a disadvantage just in terms of geographic location or maybe even citizenship as related to buying artisanal wet shaving products because many of them come
hmm
from the States and many of the artisans in the States are top notch. So you do what you have to. If you have to pay a premium, many of us do just to have and enjoy the products. Or
yeah, yeah,
get
that
down
makes
to
sense.
Maggard's every year and stock up while there or something to that,
Yeah.
you know? That's it. So after all of that, is there anything that you've learned making soaps as a sideline for all these years now that you can pass on, apply to your, day job, your life, sort of wise philosophical
Yeah.
views? Yeah,
Not necessarily just like not the pure, of course, I learned how to make soap and learned how
sure.
to experiment and learn some cool stuff there. But I think in general, just running a business has really taught me a lot about interacting with people.
Yep,
Um, you know, and, and it's interesting because I obviously work with kids. I work with kids who are upset, but I feel like handling a pissed off email from a customer is so much different. And so
interesting.
I think it's taught me a lot of patience, especially in working, maybe more so working with adults who are, in my mind, irrationally angry about something and how to handle that situation.
Right. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
Yeah, all of the crisis management
And it
skills.
doesn't happen that often.
No, but
Yeah.
applying your learned in the in the context of excuse me, education and psychology, applying them to irate customers who want their shaving soap now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's been good to just, early on, I would take that really hard. I would
Yeah,
struggle if I got an angry email, I'd probably struggle to sleep that night because it would really affect me. Where
sure.
now I'd be much better at, um, yeah, I'm just not going to reply to that
I was going to say
if
I'm
it
not
was totally
replying.
irrational or if it,
Yeah, as the kids
yeah,
say,
it depends. I mean,
ghosting.
yeah, just ghosting or at least giving it the next day. Because there are some situations that, yeah, it's best just to not even engage.
Sure.
Um, Not many though. I don't think I have many of those like the bigger guys probably do, but they also can hire customer service teams.
True, true. But it seems that, oftentimes these wet shavers are a particular breed. I don't know if it's, a hobbyist mindset. I'm not going to generalize to that extent, but tempers can run high
Mhm.
for no good reason. There's a lot of drama in a space that
Yeah,
really doesn't seem to merit it.
yeah. You're right. And I think that's probably the scary part is that, if I get upset and fire off some angry email, not very long, that angry email is going to be posted all over typically Facebook
Right.
and in 15, 20 different Facebook groups. And
And
so,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
you really learn how to navigate that.
you have to. It's quite easy to affect your reputation almost in an instant way these days. So it's a
Yeah.
whole new minefield of navigating, I imagine.
Yeah. And that I just to jump back to a way earlier question really made me when you asked me how the community's changed,
Yes.
I think that's a big change in our wet shaving is there is not that kind of drama anymore. Or if there is, I guess I'm
Okay.
not paying good enough attention to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
There's still some drama, but it's not
Not like it used
crazy
to be.
drama, I guess.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
comforting. That's
Where it
comforting.
seems like I think Facebook more naturally breeds that just because there's so many wet shaving groups that it bleeds between groups and it's harder to control.
Sure. And again, I think that our wet shaving in any case is intentionally or purposefully curated to keep things more in line or to sort of
Yeah.
reduce that potential. There's always the daily questions, and sometimes, that thread
Yeah.
really explodes. But in general, it's good to hear. It's good to hear that we're growing up and maturing, maybe. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I
that's, that's a
definitely
good,
feel that way. And maybe part of it is I've grown up and matured with the sub too.
right. That's, reasonable to say, I guess. And that's, hopeful for the future.
And that actually, again, I'm having thoughts as you say stuff, the connecting back to the golden age of wet shaving.
Yeah,
I wondered when you asked me that and when you've asked previous guests that, I think you've gotten the answer that I gave a few times about 2018, 2019, 2020. But part of that might be that was my peak thrill too.
interesting.
And so maybe part of my answer and some of those guys' answer was that because our thrill has dropped off a little bit, maybe so too is
Yeah,
our thought on the community, I guess.
that makes sense. That would make a lot of sense. And again, it was
Yeah.
before my time, so I don't really know, but it seemed like it was a lot, like you said, sort of artisans coming out left and right all over the place, and a lot of people getting into it. But I guess it comes in waves, and who knows
Yeah.
when the next wave will hit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be interested to see if you had somebody new or you maybe asked Jeep. I can't remember what he said. Just did he see the golden age as being more recent, being that he's more recent to the community too?
I'll have to have him back on to ask him because I don't know that I did. But I will
I
say
can't
though
remember
that
either.
he's an anomaly. It's rare that you get
That's true too.
such a
Yeah.
wonderful character who comes in and
Yeah.
is just everywhere all at once. Uh,
That is true.
he's maybe the biggest fan of wet shaving I've met so far in this hobby.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's a great point.
it's inspiring to me at least. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day,
Well,
he's a great guy too. So
it's
win-win
people like
all
him
around.
that keep me in business. So
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we're all happy that you're still in business and that you're still an active member of the sub. I think it means a lot to a lot of us. So thanks, Kyle, and
yeah.
keep it going.
Yeah. Thanks. I love it.
Great. And I'm really happy that we were able to chat about the things we love this evening and find out a
Yeah. It
little
was a good time.
thanks. Find out a little bit more about you, maybe a little bit more about me, and that's what we do here on Ray Mooney's Wild World of Wet Shaving. So I'll say to you, thank you again for being a guest. Thanks to all the listeners for listening as usual. And we'll see you on the flip side, Kyle. Thanks again.
Sounds good. See
All
you
right.
around.